morning. I'm Maiki Oreta, and you're watching Basis Points, where we dive deep into the numbers and the stories that drive our economy and shape our world. The headlines. The Social Security system forges ahead with a controversial contribution hike, ignoring criticism from multiple sectors. Meta shakes up Facebook with radical changes, dropping third-party fact-checking and loosening content rules. And U.S. President-elect Donald Trump drops a bombshell, saying military action is on the table to seize Greenland and the Panama Canal. Let's take a quick look at how the financial markets performed overnight. Now, on Wall Street, U.S. stocks took a hit Tuesday after strong economic data fueled fears of an inflation rebound, threatening to delay the Federal Reserve's plans to ease monetary policy. With the economy showing resilience, investors are now questioning when the central bank will deliver its first interest rate cut this year.
Stocks today are really selling off because we're seeing a much more robust labor market. Job openings above 8 million for the first time since May. So it's not an easing labor market. It remains a very strong labor market. Plus, we saw the services ISM number pick up and tick a little bit higher. So it looks like the Fed has more concerns when it comes to inflation and robust economic growth. And that pushed interest rates higher and kind of pushed down that equity market as people are concerned that we may not get as many cuts this year as we were expecting, which is already quite low at maybe 2 for the full year, and now it's maybe 1.
The S&P 500 dropped 1.11%. The Nasdaq Composite plunged 1.89%, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average slipped 0.42. Rather, 0.4%. Now, over in Europe, markets were mixed. The FTSE 100 inched up just 0.05%. Germany's DAX index higher by 0.6%, and France's CAC 40 up as well by 0.6%. Now, the Social Security system is raising members' contributions from 14% to 15%, despite calls from many groups to delay this increase. SSS President and CEO Robert Joseph De Claro says that the hike will keep the agency's funds sustainable until 2053, much longer than the previous estimate of 14 years. He also promises better programs and improved systems to give members a smoother experience.
Mas mahihirapan ho ang ating mga manggagawang Pilipino pag isususpend natin to o i-delay. Kasi ang perang makukuha ho ng SSS ay magagamit ho para mapa-improve pa ang benefits natin in the future.
For Philippine businesses, this means higher employer contributions, adding to costs. But it also helps guarantee long-term benefits for employees, supporting workforce stability. The National Grid Corporation of the Philippines is under fire from House lawmakers amid allegations of excessive revenues. Here's Zandro Ochona with the details.
The House of Committee on Ways and Means is looking at tax payments made by the National Grid Corporation. In his presentation during Tuesday's hearing, Committee Chairman Representative Joey Salceda stressed the grid company is exempted from paying corporate income tax, VAT, and real property tax. The company is also paying smaller franchise tax compared to other companies.
Admittedly, I was part of the what they call Economic Manager +1 of Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. So you can get a better price for NGCP, so the franchise tax was brought down to only 3% to make it more sellable.
The committee discussed the company's 204.3 billion pesos excess revenues from 2016 to 2020. This is based on calculations made by the Energy Regulatory Commission or ERC. However, a lawmaker wants ERC officials held accountable for a resolution in 2011 allowing NGCP to pass on its 3% franchise tax. This was only suspended in 2023.
We thought it was faster to issue the suspension resolution and stop the collection, but we do admit we have to sort out those issues pointed out by Congressman Dagook if we were to go back and do a retroactive application of that suspension and order a refund.
Hindi naman po nila ipasa yon kung wala yung resolusyon na yon. Kung hindi sila pinahintulutan ng regulator. Can the committee explore the possibility to recommend kung ano yung possible legal accountabilities ng mga commissioners ng ERC na nag-approve nung petisyon ng NGCP na ipasa yung franchise tax nila.
NGCP has asked Congress to give them more time to explain their side.
We respectfully acknowledge the Congress' legislative power to review, refine, and revise the existing legislation as well as NGCP franchise granted by the Congress. And in light of the presentation made by the chairperson, we request that NGCP given time to submit a response to address the concerns of the committee and other committee as well.
Salceda also wants to look into the ownership issue of the company. Zandro Ochona, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
Lawmakers are considering a controversial plan to let the executive branch right-size government agencies without the need for congressional approval. Agatha Gregorio has more on this developing story.
The government could save 3 billion pesos if they right-size just 3% of its workers. That's according to the Budget and Management Department at a consultative meeting with the Senate on the National Government Act of 2022. But lawmakers were quick to question this amount.
But you say, it's an incomplete figure because you have to pay separation din eh. You will not realize that on the first year that you abolish certain positions because you have to pay separation. Maglalabas ka muna ng pera bago mo kitain yan eh. Kailan ma-realize yung 3 billion if 3% is right-sized?
The DBM says it is still finalizing the figures. The agency adds it may give the study on this by March or April. Meanwhile, Senate President Cheese Escudero clarified the right-sizing bill is not just about reducing employees and saving money. The senator says this is also for more efficient delivery of services.
If we approve this bill and we authorize the president to so reorganize the executive branch, the creation of the offices you want to create can and will be done through or by executive fiat. Hindi na kailangan dumaan sa Kongreso.
Some agencies will not be included in the plan, such as the Philippine National Police, the Bureau of Jail Management and Penology, the Bureau of Fire Protection, and the Defense Department. The DND supports this, especially since they are transitioning to external defense.
Yung sa Armed Forces of the Philippines should not be included because of the security, evolving security. Masyado pong dynamic to be tied into law. That is why, based on the Executive Order 292, nasa Secretary of National Defense to determine the size and structure of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Kung itatide up po natin ito sa batas, ay baka po hindi maka-respond appropriately ang inyong sandatang lakas.
Sir, dinedelegate namin sa Presidente ha. Walang nakaspecify dito sa bill na to kung ilan, anong opisina, ng anumang ahensya. In fact, we are delegating the power of Congress to create offices to the President. Which is contrary to what you're saying na nilalagay namin sa batas. Hindi ha?
Regarding health, the DBM says the updated version of the proposed bill would include doctors, nurses, and other medical personnel. This is for more permanent positions for them. But nurses are calling for more changes, especially when it comes to pay.
Some nurses are classified as agricultural. Actually, in the labor code, nurses are classified as non-agricultural workers, for which reason they are given just the minimum wage. So for the longest time, we've been asking labor to please classify them accordingly because they are professional and PRC accredited practitioners. So that's the reason why nurses in the private sector receive minimum wage, no? At ang panawagan po nga namin, kagaya ng Philippine Nurses Association, i-standardize to 50,000 starting salary ang mga nurses kaya nasa pribado sila o pampublikong sektor.
The difference in pay among workers in various local government units was another issue. According to the Philippine Independent Public Sector Employees Association, those working for 6th-class LGUs earn 35% less than those from 1st-class LGUs.
Yung sweldo po nung mga LGU employees and officials, ang nagbabayad yung LGU.
Yes, sir.
At kaya 6th class, 5th class siya, ibig sabihin, mababa yung income ng LGU. Kung ipantay po namin yun sa 1st class, wala hong pambabayad yung LGU. So, the question is, where will the money come from to pay for the differential? I agree with you, but
Thank you.
how do we implement it?
Escudero adds they will look into the issue. Reviewing the mandates of agencies, including those deemed obsolete, will also be part of the DBM study regarding the bill. According to the Senate President, they will file the substitute bill on Monday. Agatha Gregorio, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
If approved, this could speed up government streamlining, but raises concerns over checks and balances. For businesses, a leaner bureaucracy may mean faster transactions and better service delivery. Now, in other news, we have this just in. Actress Rufa May Quinto is now in the custody of the NBI following her arrival in Manila on a PAL flight from San Francisco this Wednesday morning. Let's get the details from Nancy Carabjal. Hi, Nancy. Go ahead.
Good morning. Actress Rufa May Quinto is now under the custody of the NBI following her arrival on board a PAL flight from San Francisco, USA at past 5 o'clock in the morning, Wednesday. Airport authorities also said the actress surrendered to NBI through her lawyers. Quinto had to go through certain process of taking her mugshots and fingerprinting before she can post bail and then released by the court for her temporary liberty. Quinto is facing 14 counts of violation of Section 8 of the Securities Regulation Code, which prohibits securities from being sold or offered for sale without a registration. Quinto's total bail for her temporary liberty is pegged at around 1.8 million for 14 counts at 126,000 per count. Quinto's case is the same company, Dermacare, involved in the Neri Naig case and another actress. Apart from Quinto and Naig, 11 others were also respondents to the SEC violation case that states securities such as shares and investments may not be sold in the Philippines without license approved by the regulating body. Yes, Maiki.
Okay, Nancy. So, talking about Rufa May's involvement in this, was it direct? Was it indirect involvement? And how serious are the charges against her?
Well, her counsel at least said that her defense would be she is not directly soliciting investments, so it's still up to the court to decide whether the gravity of the accusations against her.
O sige, maraming salamat, Nancy Carabjal.
Okay.
Now, in other news, social media giant Meta scraps its U.S. fact-checking program and launches a new community-based system similar to the approach used by X. Meta is also relaxing restrictions on hot-button issues like immigration and gender identity. This marks a shift in Meta's policy as CEO Mark Zuckerberg previously stood by strict content moderation despite backlash from conservative groups.
First, we're going to get rid of fact-checkers and replace them with community notes similar to X, starting in the US. After Trump first got elected in 2016, the legacy media wrote nonstop about how misinformation was a threat to democracy. We tried in good faith to address those concerns without becoming the arbiters of truth. But the fact-checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US. So over the next couple of months, we're going to phase in a more comprehensive community notes system.
The move comes as Meta and Zuckerberg appear to be aligning more closely with Donald Trump and other Republicans as the president-elect prepares for his second term.
We're also going to tune our content filters to require much higher confidence before taking down content. The reality is that this is a trade-off. It means we're going to catch less bad stuff, but we'll also reduce the number of innocent people's posts and accounts that we accidentally take down.
Meta's policy shift could change how information spreads online, impacting social discourse and business reputations. For Philippine businesses, this highlights the need to adapt to new digital trends in content moderation and engagement. On another front, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump warns of a possible military or economic action as part of his efforts to take back control of the Panama Canal. He also reiterates his desire to acquire the Danish territory of Greenland. Trump outlined his so-called expansionist agenda 2 weeks before he's sworn into office on January 20th. Trump also vowed to change the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. He also reiterated his interest in making Canada into a U.S. state.
You're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two. But I can say this, we need them for economic security. The Panama Canal was built for our military. I'm not going to commit to that now. It might be that you'll have to do something. Look, the Panama Canal is vital to our country. It's being operated by China. China. And we gave the Panama Canal to Panama. We didn't give it to China. And they've abused it.
On another front, the Philippine unemployment rate drops to 3.2% in November, marking a new low in the country's jobless numbers. This is according to the Philippine Statistics Authority, or the PSA. It's a significant improvement from 3.9% in October and the 3.6% recorded in November of 2023. The PSA says that the drop is driven by job gains in key sectors including manufacturing, accommodation and food services, human health and social work, and other services, as well as transportation and storage. We're taking a quick break. Please stay with us as we dive deep into the numbers and the narratives that matter most to your bottom line.
The latest news, national issues,
with regard to was very vocal about charter change,
the political scene, the trust and approval ratings of President Bongbong Marcos and Vice President Sara Duterte decline, and conversations with prominent personalities.
Brings back wonderful memories of past Christmases when I was a little boy in Iloilo.
Be timely informed, be insightful of the news. All these firsthand at the forefront.
Trading at the Philippine Stock Exchange opened just a few minutes ago. Let's take a look at the initial figures. Now, right now, as of 9:50 this morning, let's take a look at the PSE index, pull that up. The market is in the green. We're going sideways with a slight upward bias. We're up by about just a little under 0.2% to 65.56. Now, as you can recall, the maiden gauge declined Tuesday, yesterday, snapping out of a 3-day rally. We lost 1.2% yesterday to 65.45. This as investors digested the December 2024 inflation print, which quickened to 2.9% on the back of higher power rates and housing costs. Now, taking a look at the other market indicators, the All Shares Index is also sideways with a slight upward bias, up by a little less than 0.1% to 37.53. Taking a look at the sub-indices, all are trading in the green, marginally higher except for the Holding Firms Index, which is lower by 0.1%. Now, at the foreign exchange market, the peso opened at 58.20 against the greenback. This from its previous close of 58.18. Now, the Philippine government says its efforts to control inflation are paying off, even as December figures hit a 4-month high of 2.9%. Sujin Kim has the details.
The Philippines closed 2024 with an inflation rate of 2.9% in December, up from 2.5% in November and 2.3% in October. While inflation remains among the slowest in 4 years, this is also the highest in 4 months.
May increasing trend tayo nung October, November, December in terms of the inflation rate kasi nag-drop siya nung September, di ba?
The December uptick was driven by faster price increases in housing, utilities, and transportation. Rent inflation increased to 2.4%, while LPG soared with 7.8% inflation. Ship fares skyrocketed with 71.9% inflation, driving the sector's upward trend.
Yung pamasahe sa barko, may seasonality talaga yun, ano? Tumataas siya pag holidays, December and during summer. Hindi naman ito unique ngayong year, but of course, close to yung NCR, for example, close to 100%, no? But this is seasonality. We are expecting na after itong month, bababa naman itong pamasahe sa barko.
Restaurants, cafes, and the like lead as the top contributors to the December 2024 inflation, followed by rentals and food.
Normally, pag tumataas yung food basket, kasama yun sa restaurants. Plus, yung services, which means wages. So, yun yung may impact. Pero nakikita natin na yung malaking contributor talaga dito sa movement niya, yung raw materials, which is basically the food and non-alcoholic beverages. So,
Chicken, mangoes, and tomatoes are some of the food items that recorded higher inflation.
at the national level, ito yung nakikita kong basket natin ng commodities under the vegetables, tubers, cooking bananas at iba pa. Ang mataas na inflation rate dito, of course, kamatis, 120.8% inflation year on year. Cabbage, almost 38%. Malaki ang kanyang increase talaga dito sa National Capital Region. Yung level niya, ang NCR, yung average price ng kamatis noong Disyembre 2024 ay nasa 213 pesos and 45 centavos. Kung ikukumpara natin nung Disyembre nung 2023, ito ay nasa 64 pesos and 57 centavos lang. Ano? So talagang malaki yung kanyang increase.
Although food items such as onions and potatoes registered negative inflation, sugar, particularly brown sugar, noted slower price increase. MAPA explains typhoons and other meteorological events impact agriculture first.
November, parang 5 yata yung typhoons na nakita natin. Every time there's a typhoon, ang una talagang tumataas ang presyo ay yung mga gulay. No? Nakikita natin yung inflation rate for vegetables. But we see, of course, samahan pa natin yung demand, high demand, noong holidays.
Still, prices of rice remained resilient. Regular, well-milled, and special rice are all down from November to December.
Baka mayroon tayong expectation na maging negative na yung inflation sa rice sa January. So that's part of the good news.
Chief Economic Planner Arsenio Balisacan says the government's efforts to temper inflation have largely been successful. Chairman of the House Committee on Agriculture and Food, Wilfrido Enverga, said the Anti-Agricultural Economic Sabotage Act helped lower the prices of food items. The rice tariffication law as well empowered Filipino farmers. The Rice Competitiveness Enhancement Fund increased the 10 billion peso annual allocation to 30 billion pesos to support rice farmers. Sujin Kim, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
Inflation in the Philippines climbed to 2.9% in December, up from 2.5% in November, bringing the full-year average for 2024 to 3.2%. Now, this remains within the government's target range of 2 to 4%, but recent price increases in housing, utilities, and fuels are raising critical questions about the economy's trajectory as we move into 2025. Now, joining us live via Zoom to break down these inflation numbers and provide insights on what's ahead for the Philippine economy is Sanjay Mathur, the Chief Economist for Southeast Asia and India at ANZ Research. Sanjay, thank you for joining us all the way from Singapore.
Good morning.
Okay, Sanjay, you've got the bigger picture in view. You cover Southeast Asia and India. We got the latest inflation figures. Can you tell us from your lens, where does the Philippines stand?
Well, I think we can look at it from two perspectives. It would be fair to say that we are in a situation where inflation is slightly higher in the Philippines than the rest of the region. And I guess the real issue over here is that there's a continuous adjustment of utility costs. Food prices, even the rice prices have come down. They have really gone up a little bit. And in that sense, inflation is slightly harder in the Philippines. Now, if you look at the other economies, there is extensive subsidies, etc., that are given out. That is not happening. In terms of growth, it's actually quite interesting. The Philippines is really an outperformer, and we expect the same to continue. Having said that, when I compare sort of Philippines against its own history, I think there are pockets of weakness. And one of the interesting anomalies we have right now is that we are at full employment, and yet if you look at private consumption, it's been fairly mild at this point in time. The other sort of two areas that are worth looking at, I think Philippines has one of the most impressive infrastructure development programs on the plus side. On the negative side, we are worried about Philippines' export performance. It just doesn't seem to be taking off at this point in time. And that's something we are going to have to monitor for the rest of the year. So clearly a fairly mixed scorecard when you look at growth and inflation together.
Yeah, a mixed scorecard. Okay, now in terms of GDP, other firms like Citi Research in particular, they say that economic growth may fall short of the government's target as typhoons in the third quarter weighed down output. They trimmed GDP for 2024 to 6% from 5.8%, which is slower than the government's 6 to 7% target. What are your thoughts on this? Do you share a similar view?
We do share a similar view. Actually, we have a forecast of 5.7% for the year, and we think that that's for 2024, and we think 2025 will be roughly similar. Having said that, it's not for us, it's really also about the fact that exports haven't picked up. 2025 will have significant volatility globally, and all those factors are going to weigh on investment decisions, on consumption, etc. And that's the reason for our relatively downbeat assessment. Now, having said that, when you put Philippines in a regional context, it still looks to be far more resilient.
Yeah, that's great. And the government is in an easing cycle. Since August of last year, interest rates have been cut by 75 basis points to help propel the economy, to help it stay resilient. What are your thoughts on interest rates moving forward as we come into 2025? Do you think that the BSP is going to continue with its easing cycle vis-a-vis what's going to be going on in the U.S.? Because that sets a big tone for what's going to happen over here.
Yes, so I think that we have exactly now the same sort of, we've got 75 basis points of rate cuts priced, or rather, we are forecasting 75 basis points of rate cuts. And that sort of puts the Philippines in a slightly more sort of aggressive easing mode compared to some of the other economies. Yes, the US sort of Fed cycle will matter a lot, but perhaps less so in the Philippines than others, and that's for two reasons. One, the Philippines is not that reliant on capital flows, and the second is that even if we do take into account the capital flows may slow down, I think the Philippines has shown a slightly higher threshold for a weaker peso. So put together, I think there is a lot more policy autonomy available for the Philippines.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you say we have a higher threshold for a weaker peso. To what levels? Because all of this monetary policy easing, your expectations are for 75 basis cuts more through to 2025. Where will that put the local currency?
So if you sort of look at how, the peso has moved, there was a time when 56 or 57 was the threshold, increased to 58. And now I think it'd be fair to say that a peso at 60 will not create any problems. One important aspect of this is that the impact of a weaker peso or domestic inflation has progressively come off.
Okay, and just some fun questions before we let you go. Super quick questions. Sanjay, if you could describe the Philippine economy in one word, what would that be?
Stable.
Stable. Was that it? Stable? Okay, that's a good one. What's one underrated strength of the Philippine economy?
The people.
The people. Okay, and if you could fix one thing about the Philippine economy, snap your fingers and fix one thing about the economy, what would that be?
Increased competition.
All right. Thank you so much, Sanjay. It was a pleasure to have you. Thank you for joining us all the way from Singapore.
Thank you.
And that's it for Basis Points. I'm Maiki Oreta. We'll be back tomorrow for more news on the financial markets and more. Keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel.